anyway, those are a few things for you to consider. And logistically, we're going to have one of our organizers, Donnie, come up and give us just a little bit of an intro. We got feedback last year that we were throwing everybody in the deep end, and we didn't even give them a, what is this DevOps thing anyway? So we're going to start you out with just a little bit of an intro, and then we're going to have our opening keynote speaker. So I'll be back up here to say a little bit more about her. But for now, Donnie, there's very bright lights, but I think I see Donnie coming. Donnie is going to come and give us a few words that hopefully set the stage for what you're going to see and do in the next couple of days, and tell you a little bit more about the conference in general. So, Donnie. Can we get a hand for Donnie?
I appreciate that grudging applause. That's always nice. Good way to start the morning out. So I recently moved jobs, so these are very corporate slides. Don't think of me that way, please. I'm going to try and jump through this really quickly. How many of you already feel like you know what DevOps is? Nice. That's great. Thanks for coming. How many of you could describe it to somebody else? Okay, a few less. And that's because it's hard to describe. I agree with you. So we're going to go through DevOps from a few different perspectives so that whoever you're talking to, you can give them some kind of sense of what it's all about. And try and do that all in about 5 minutes. So the first way, and the way it actually all started back in the olden days of 2008 or so, oh, there goes the slides. Nice. Was agile infrastructure, right? Taking agile software development, bringing it through to productionizing the software itself. And this went back to ideas like, infrastructure as code, right? That was the core of where it started. Obviously, it's gone a long way since then. We're thinking about things very differently now. And that's why at the bottom I put, thinking about agile, not just about developers and operations, or developers, operations, and security, or developers, operations, testing, and security, but really about iterating more quickly between the company you work for, the business you work for, and the people using what you're building, right? Because the whole idea is you're able to iterate more quickly, build the right thing, rather than building the wrong thing and delivering it fast. It'd be nice if you built the right thing and delivered it quickly, or at least that you could iterate on it after you built the wrong thing in the first place. So that's the way I think about DevOps, is about speeding up that iteration cycle between the company, right, people back in marketing and the business analysts and whatever, and the people using what you're building, your customers, your users, whatever. So that's way one. Way two is actually a way that I think is sort of owned by John Willis, right? He has this acronym called CAMS, which he goes through called Culture, Automation, Measurement, Sharing. I don't really disagree with that, although I kind of think sharing falls into culture, so I just call it CAM. So the first step is culture, right? And the most important step is culture. It's all about the people, and the process is much more so than it is about the tools. So tear down all the silos, right? Get rid of all those organizational hurdles that are keeping you from working together. There's a lot of big companies for which this is the hardest. There's an insurance company I worked with a little while back where their developers were in the Midwest and their ops people were in New England. It makes it pretty tough to get people in the same room when they're not even in the same state. But that's the kind of goal you have to strive for, whether it's a physical room or a virtual room. I don't really care. In fact, I'm a big proponent of remote work. But the idea is get all the people from all these different functional units together working on things from a business level, saying like, okay, here's the product we're working on. We've got the marketing people, the analysts, the developers, the ops, you name it, they're there. And in fact, if you could have a customer in the room, that'd be fantastic, but good luck on that one. So, right, step one of culture is thinking, tear down all the silos. Step two, and I put this up not because containerization itself is important, but because it's a way of building empathy across all these different teams using shared understanding of the tools you're using, right? So both developers and ops folks and people who don't consider themselves either but are somewhere in the middle or both can all sort of centralize around shared ideas that involve code, right? The problem with this is that works great for the early definitions of DevOps. It doesn't work so great once you bring in the business types, which is why other methods of sharing empathy have become so important, and why we've moved from technologies like IRC, which is really hard for non-technical people, to things more like Slack or HipChat, right? Another way of building empathy is being able to see what other people are doing. And so there's this whole chat ops idea, right, of being able to collaborate around the problems that are happening, fix the problems, deal with the infrastructure in a chat. And when you've got people in other departments and business side able to see what's happening, they can begin to share that empathy with you, and vice versa. If they're talking about, marketing stuff, hopefully you can get it into some kind of a dashboard, for example, the same one that you're using for your metrics. And again, start building that empathy. Point 2, automation, right? Pretty straightforward, right? You think about it from the infrastructure level. Infrastructure as code. You've got your, actually, CF Engine. I put this on here. It's been around since 1991, and it took us, 17 years to come up with this DevOps idea after CF Engine came out, so we've been a little bit slow on the pickup there. But we've got it figured out now, right? But the first step is infrastructure. The second step is, before I go that, this is actually a great case study if you're trying to convince your bosses to do DevOps. Knight Capital is a hedge fund that lost $500 million in the span of about 8 minutes because they didn't automate their servers. This is actually from the SEC investigation of that. They managed to automate 7 out of their 8. They didn't realize there was an 8th. They deployed new code, and the 8th one went crazy. And then they went bankrupt. The second side of automation is continuous integration, continuous delivery. And I don't have time to get into the rotating roles side of things, but come talk to me later. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. But so you think about automation, you think about, one, how do we automate everything so it's reproducible, reliable, shareable, but also so we can go back to the original idea of DevOps of delivering software more quickly. And then the last piece is measurement, right? You think about the old school measurement, the new school measurement, where we've actually got UX that is pretty and works well. And that's this new sort of monitoring love movement. There's a conference called Monitorama that I highly recommend to you that you can go check out to hear more about that. And finally, measuring, not just the software, but the organization. And this is some work that's come out of, let's see, a number of people, including Gene Kim, sponsored by ThoughtWorks and Puppet, and I don't remember who all else. And Nicole, what's her last name? Forsgren, yes, Nicole Forsgren, who used to be a professor and now works for Chef, I believe, because it was pretty cool. Same thing I did, by the way. Came out of academia to do tech stuff because it's way more fun. But so measure not just the software, but the organization. And it turns out that DevOps is actually pretty good. So if you're trying to convince your company of it, there's a lot of numbers now to support that. And with that, there's 5 minutes of DevOps. Thanks.